Good.
As the parent of a young 10-year-old daughter who's going to a STEM school right now and has a number of friends, what would you say opportunities should I seek out as a parent to open to her, to make available to her, to engage and let her thrive in the engineering, science, technology, math spaces?
I have a daughter and 3 sons, so I know a little bit more about the sons part of it. But my daughter was always interested in science. And her experience in school was teachers who discouraged her and encouraged the boys in the class. She was actually an extremely good student. She became an MIT student. She had to have some ability, and it's just what happens that little girls have many levels of discouragement. Sometimes at home, sometimes in school, from the playmates, from the other students in the classroom, and so the role of the parents is encouragement. And, well, MIT has some Saturday programs for kids where they meet other kids with sciences. That's a good thing. I didn't have that when I was a child, but I think it's a good thing. My children didn't come to the Saturday programs because they had it at home.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to answer this question because I'm 11 years ahead of your daughter. So I'm where hopefully she will be. And at age 10, I had extremely encouraging parents. I went to public high school, and I was lucky. I had a very encouraging physics teacher my junior year of high school, so now I am pursuing physics. And my father's an electrical engineer, so that totally helped. But my first 2 years of university actually were where I got extremely discouraged. And part of that was because I didn't know what I want, and I still don't know what I want to do with physics. Because whether you go into engineering or math or bio or any of these subjects, the whole question is, okay, well, you have to get research experience. Well, okay, what do you want to do research in? So, well, I don't know. Everything possible. And no one will help me because I want to do everything. So my best advice from 11 years ahead is let her experience anything and everything. Have her talk to adults, professors, people outside of universities and institutions, whether it's private or run by the government, whatever. Just let her talk to students, everybody from all different fields. Let her get an idea of finding out what type of skills she needs and what type of tasks she's required to do. So she can say, oh, I like doing problem sets. Let me, maybe think more about doing theoretical stuff, or maybe math. Or I really like the hands-on kind of stuff, then maybe the engineering would be better. Let her figure out what's very specific little tiny seemingly, they seem maybe totally irrelevant details she loves, and let her talk to people who are in that field now to see if it's applicable. She may seem too young, but it's the best thing you could do for her.
I wanted to sort of follow on to an even further point that my own experience as the first woman PhD in 5 years at my all-male, otherwise school, is that computer science is a lot worse than biology, than math, than physics. And if the United States government is going to do something, they're going to have to actually look at that and say, well, CS is what it was 20-some years ago. We're still producing the incredibly dismal number of women that we did 20-some years ago. So I don't think we can talk about STEM if we're really going to stop this from happening. And I do think it's a vicious cycle. And I do think that having all male professors and being the only female can make you suspect just for being in the room. And I've had one male professor steal my work, which I'm actually going to sue him for. And yes, and it's so easy. Let me tell you, anybody who wants to steal something, the web will ruin your plans. Because before the web, I didn't know he had done it. But after the web, Google, bam, he's taken my material 10 times. So now it's like cut and dried. Somebody else, another male professor, tried to kick me out of school to take my work. tried to flunk me on an exam. So this, I know I'm an N of 1. Your problem is, all of our problem is where are the other 200 women who got a PhD when I did? Because that's all there is in the whole country, and that's miserable. So I have a lot of ideas about how this could change, but I really think we have to look at computer science as a different field, because for some reason, that's the numbers. And I did a fellowship in medicine where we talked about evidence-based, and the evidence of the numbers we have is that computer science teaching is dismally failing women all across the board.
That's a good point, because there's a lot of effort right now is done, as you know, code.org, which are trying to teach the programming at the elementary and middle school level. So let me turn it to our panel and say, how do you react to some of these issues, especially in terms of the education as well as infusion of technology? As you know, we are now on Google, we are on the Facebook, Twitter, all of that. How has that changed the paradigm for women to be in education, and especially in science and technology? Any comments, Yona?
Well, I don't know the figures in computer science. At MIT in computer science, where I do, we have lunch together. Electrical engineering and computer science, I'm very familiar with that. And among the faculty here, we have quite a few women faculty. And they work hard to interest more women in computer science. So, yes, there are fewer women in computer science than men, but compared to physics, there are a lot more women in computer science. So when I'm there, I think they're doing well rather than.
But that's not a national thing, and it is not borne out nationally.
And I think Silicon Valley is the biggest culprit, if I heard the statistics correctly. And I would address this to Johan, as a national program, is something should be done to make that field more family friendly. Whether it's just, it perpetuates itself because the guys just hang out all day, all night, and, do all those guy things that perhaps women, unfortunately, don't typically have the family bandwidth to work the same kind of hours or the same odd hours that computer programmers like to claim is necessary.
Let's get some more views. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. This is a great presentation. I've gotten a lot out of the history that you presented and the strategic, the strategies that Johan presented. And Muriel, I could have listened to your story, to more of your story for hours. Thank you so much. The one thing I was thinking about as you were talking about making more opportunities for women in the STEM field is to look at the bigger picture of what we're looking at as far as like sort of our whole population. Because if we make opportunities for women in STEM, how are we going to respond to that young man who really is interested in child ed or who wants to become a nurse? How are we going to look at the flip side and see those roles? Elementary educators, how are we going to support people of all genders to do those kinds of jobs that still need to be done? It seems like we really need to look at equity across the job board to bring more women into some fields and to make other fields open to other groups that have been traditionally held by women. So I was thinking about how to kind of open up several different areas. And have you thought about that, and what are your ideas about that? I don't want to be open.
I know there's a lot more thinking that needs to happen in that area, but the only thing from a policy standpoint I'm aware of is that there's some federal statutes that authorize spending on education at the secondary and post-secondary level that actually have performance accountability measures that deal with non-traditional participation and placement in non-traditional occupations for gender, by gender. So it's a two-way measure that is being used there. It's very limited. It's only in one of the few statutes that authorize that type of spending. And we have an interest in not only broadening that beyond that particular law, but to also expand upon it so it's not just about gender, But it's particularly about combination of race, gender, and ethnicity, and in many instances, disability.
I'm looking for diversity in those fields when we talk things
Kumkum?
Yes, first of all, I wanted to acknowledge Professor Dresselhaus. I'm just in awe because I'm at that midpoint. I'm neither with the 10-year-old nor the one, I'm a 55-year-old alum of tech here in chemical engineering, the first engineer of my family. But what I'm trying to see is I live and breathe the mentoring type role, which I think I'm doing well, but after I'm hearing how you're talking, I need to up the ante from my end in how can I be more of a mentor. Currently, I'm an employer, so not only in social settings or in business settings, but in terms of hiring and creating opportunities, I'm trying to see what I can do. And the work with the federal government that we're doing with Health and Human Services on the contractual level, I'm trying to see what we can do to have more women in business and in these positions of authority to be able to create some of those opportunities. But I would welcome any additional guidance from you.
Well, I think that what you're doing, being here and speaking up is an important step in the process. Just be active, be visible, come up with ideas, get your friends involved too. We just need more people working in these areas.
Hi, I'm a little out of my element because I'm a middle school English teacher. And I'm here because something that profoundly interests me right now is interdisciplinary curriculum, which I think Common Core is starting to get to a little bit. But what I'm really interested in is the viewpoint in terms of especially pulling girls into STEM, this idea that you're looking at problem solving, you're looking at curriculum that is that isn't isolating content. And so that children have to pull in all areas of their thinking to address whatever they're being asked to address. And I'm just wondering about, because I feel like I was appreciating your 10-year discussion, because I feel like I started this work 6 years ago in the school I'm in, and it's been a battle. And so I'm just wondering, I'm hoping that 4 years from now that isn't the case, and I would like to hear the point of view of the people on the panel.
Back there, after you have.
Can we answer?
Good.
Can we? I think your point is very well taken. Research in general is getting much more interdisciplinary than it ever was before, because the problems that we have to solve today are much larger in scope. So energy, security for the whole world, that requires every single kind of science there is. But the social science has to be in there, and the economists, and all of these people. And we have to learn how to talk to them and how to work together. And so how you do this for kids, I think, is you give them a real problem to solve, more of a practical problem where they have to bring in all kinds of different ideas. And maybe put it in terms of, I don't know, you have a contest, and they all get prizes in the end. They all feel successful. They've done something interesting.
Good.
Hi, I'd like to answer the gentleman's question here about your daughter. I think you should bring your daughters here. And the woman that spoke back here, one of the things, I went to MIT a while ago, and one of the things that excited me to go to MIT was that I met a number of people that had gone to MIT. And the neat thing about MIT is you can grab anybody on this campus, and you can, woman or man, and start talking about technology, and they get excited about it. And that's what people need. They need people to get excited. So when you bring your daughter to MIT, there's lots of events for young people that they can come to. And then they can get excited about technology, and that's what people need. That's big.
Yeah, and I agree. I also think it's what I should have added is not just discussing it as well, though. Don't let your daughters think that they're too young to do anything. not just listen and learn, but I mean be active. Even if they can't work in a lab, like ask them if, maybe even once a month, if a professor would take them in or someone would take them in and just, teach them, okay, well this is where my research is now, next month, where is it then? And I know research is sometimes a very slow process. However, it might show them what it is in a hands-on sense. They might not be able to run the experiments and they might not be able to do the data analysis, but they can at least see firsthand what's going on, because that's also another point of it.
I've brought my girls to my work where they can see the robot operating.
That's what my dad did with me when I was very young.
Yeah, next.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things. One is someone who experienced almost everything in this room. The only black, the only female, the only engineer at Cornell in certain classes, at U of P in certain classes, at MIT in certain classes. I know about all of this. So I have developed some things to get at the trigger, and that is motivation. Now, it's very interesting that right now, as Professor Mildred, Professor Russell said, she said, my goodness, what's available now compared to when I came up, it's just crazy. So we've got to find a way to get people to access it, because I go to some of these things and it's not, to me, a lot of people should be there that aren't. Your girls, some other people, we've got to make sure that people find out about it and encourage their children to go. That's where the encouraging parents come from. And there's a science club for girls right here in Cambridge. There is the Girl Scout STEM badge program. And what's nice about that, you're in the company of girls. You're getting other things as well. And then places like the Museum of Science, other places have these programs. That overnight camp for girls, those are things that are fascinating, where the girls spend all night in a science museum. I mean, how cool is that? So we've got to get these things.
Based on some of the work that has been done, learning and teaching, we know that everyone learns differently. And so one of the issues is that girls may learn differently than the boys, and everyone is different brain power and brain connections. So the idea of getting something which is translating professors like Professor Mildred Dresselhaus, who may be at 10,000 feet above us, and giving that in a multiple learning strategies, especially using online education. So I'm trying to bring this discussion back to education technology. If we have adaptive and synaptic learning systems where a student can learn the way they want to learn and then interact with the professor, then we can possibly create this democratization idea that you were talking about. So my question to the panel would be, do you think there will be infusion of, let's say, equal part, or at least some part of education technology, classroom instruction, and then some of these adaptive engaging systems that will then make this playing field equal for all genders? I'm not just talking about male and female, but could be there are other variations that we talk about.
I think some of these emerging technologies are very, very promising. But I remain concerned about the fact that it's not because we have them that people then will actually access them and benefit from them, and that we will get the job done that we need to get done. So there is this whole other way of thinking about adaptation, and what type of partnerships need to be created to make sure that a young girl who is in one of the clubs in Roxbury or Dorchester has the same opportunity to access those opportunities than someone who lives in Winchester, Alabama, or wherever they might be. So I think just having the technology in and of itself is great. It can help a lot, but there's more that we need to do to actually get this solved.
I'd say encouragement.
Encouragement. Right, but I'm giving an example of a student from Mongolia who comes to MIT and Stanford and Berkeley fighting for him because he aces edX, one of the edX courses. So, and a student from Jabalpur offered full scholarship, which is a remote part of India, because they use the technology in order to get to that level that now they are discovered. by the good universities, I think that is a democratization that I'm looking for, especially in STEM, because there are lots of opportunities, but how do we do that? Yes, good.
Yeah, so as well as things like Science Club for Girls, what I think is very effective at creating role images for women, particularly in inner city and less advantaged locations. There's other things like CodeEd that are looking specifically at the problem of coding and making coding a second language for everybody. I mean, why not? It is the way that the next gen. It's a language that the next gen needs to have. And then I do think that this idea of giving encouragement at all levels. It doesn't. Yes, we want to select some of the great ones, but I think Nisha's point about being reflective of some aspects of brain science and thinking about that. And so I'm going to relay a story that I heard once that's focused on the message for girls, which is that in many cases people will give the message to a girl who's doing well in math at the 5th grade, oh, you must be very bright. And it turns out that eventually those boys' brains do start catching up. And so the boys start showing up with some competition by the time we're getting into the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades as also being quite good at these fields. And so if they were only told that they were doing well because they were bright, then all of a sudden they suddenly think, well, maybe I'm not as bright anymore. So if the message was you were doing well because you were working hard, it's a message that can persist forever and doesn't create that risk feeling, which may be coming on for a lot of other reasons as young women go through that period of their life. So I've been working in EdTech for the last while-ish, as you know, yes. And so we really do think that there's some great new categories coming on that are going to make it easier for lots of different people to get their hands in. But it's a slow process because this is education. It's a slow-moving industry. People
Let me call
the way they did it last year.
Let me call on my friend Charles McClinton, who is the Assistant Dean of Minority Education at MIT, to give his opinion on, we'll talk about HBCUs and minority education. But tell us about how does that affect with some of the ideas, especially for women and them going into engineering.
Well, I think it's very similar to what we've already heard in terms of how it's being approached. The data is across the board. I mean, the 17% that they talk about in terms of the U.S. and STEM education, it is not broken down. That's U.S. in general. And that is just dismal when you look at it in comparison to the rest of the world. The question I have is, at what point, and I think we've addressed that, do we start to make all of these opportunities and programs available to students? Another question I have is, we found that there is an attachment that we put to equity, and that usually is money. And I wonder sometimes if we should be asking the question, if we're going to award money for certain kinds of research, should we have certain requirements that women should be a part of that at a higher percentage than what we're seeing now? Sometimes people understand money, but they don't understand the other aspect of it, or they at least try not to look at it from that perspective. Maybe that's a policy issue, I don't know, but I think it's something at least that should be taken a good look at. We've done it for athletics, we've done it for other fields. I think we do the same for sciences as well. With regard, final comment, with regard to the HBCUs, a lot of what I hear now is very similar. Certainly, some of the schools have done quite well, but there are only a few schools that are being funded at the highest level. There are at least 100 other schools that are accredited, and I might add accredited, that have students as well who are just as capable. Even if you were to get one student from each of the other schools that are not presently involved in receiving the funding, you have at least increased those numbers by maybe 100 individuals if only one student came from those schools. So I think all of what we're talking about as relates to women and it relates to underrepresented minorities all still fall under that 17%, whether we're talking about males, females, etc.
I mean, I think there are a number of programs already where certain subpopulations receive some preferential or competitive priority, if you will. But I'm certain that there are other ways that we can think about creating incentives to ultimately change institutional behavior, right? Because that's I think, one of the key things here that needs to get addressed. Because I mean, people at institutions make decisions, make choices when they hire people, when they recruit people, and so forth. So if we don't believe that institutional behavior, either at a company or elsewhere, is the way it is, then we need to think about what might be some incentives so that we can change that behavior.
I would say that by giving more encouragement and advertisement to people that are gifted and successful in the academics in schools would be beneficial. Right now, the athletes and the teams, football teams or whatever, that's where the focus is, and people know who are the great quarterbacks in the colleges much better than they know who are the really bright students that are going to make a difference, say, to science and technology.
I mean, I can't agree more, but I also wanted to point out that in many of our high schools across the country, there are these student organizations that organize these skills competitions that start at the local level, then go to the state level, regional, national, and now global. The U.S. actually had a team in the global skills competition. I don't think we won. At least we made it to the final round. So, but these types of initiatives in schools address areas like robotics, whatever it be, and that's where young men and young women build robots together, or they, and this exists for many different disciplines, and they also get lots of leadership.
But there's interdisciplinary
teamwork
activity in
So, and that's something that, in addition to what Millie was saying, I think is something that we should try to create more of.
I know you have many more burning questions. Let me take one from there. And then,
as people mention things like mentoring and early experiences and everything, I think one thing that I think really helps a lot of people continue in science is if they have that strength and that resilience. So that if a young woman or an underrepresented minority student, or even to a certain extent some of the white male people get into a class and they say, oh my gosh, I can't handle organic chemistry or college calculus or something like that, they won't say, oh, I can't be a scientist, or if somebody says to them, oh, women can't be scientists or whatever, they just brush that off and they say, this is one thing, one challenge, one person's opinion, and I can still move on with my goals and my career. So I think that, when we were talking about mentoring and everything and all that, I think that helps build that ability to brush off negative comments. It also helps provide people with a way of addressing challenges. So I think mentoring and these early experiences, I know for myself, when I got some negativity about a woman going into science and getting a PhD and everything, I could look back on my own experiences in high school or college or whatever and say, but I did achieve. I did do these things. I did have these experiences. I will succeed. And I think that's one thing that we need to build in our young women, our underrepresented minorities, is that knowledge that they can succeed even if they face an obstacle.
great comment. So, you have a last?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that my personal experience, my experience as a professor, and the fact that I had to take my own son out of the Newton public schools and pay over $20,000 a year to get him a decent math teacher in grade 6. If we pretend that the public schools all across the country are doing a good job, we might as well just keep talking and do nothing, because nothing's going to happen. And the inner city kids, I mean, I don't want to go there with what education they got. And it's social justice that people get a decent education. And the thing you're doing could be one solution, because we don't have a lot of good math teachers. We don't have a lot of good math teachers because the key people who taught me very well in public schools were women. And women don't do this anymore because it doesn't pay. And the smart ones can be programmers or something else, and they make a lot more money. And I had all female math teachers, and I came out of school like a blaze in math. I had I hate to say this, please apologize in advance, all male science teachers, and I knew nothing about chemistry or science. But I learned something. If you know math, you can figure out science. The reverse is not true. So I could do the formula, so I knew what I was doing. And I slid through. I got to do what I wanted to do because of my math teachers, my all-female math teachers. Those women are gone. And we're not replacing them unless we pay more. That could be actually a federal thing that good math teachers get bonuses. I mean, because I know on the state level we're not going to do it because on the English teachers want as much, and I'm sorry, but it's easier to find good English teachers. I don't know what to do about that.
I have an announcement that this is just first of the series of the talk on women in engineering. We are going to have a follow-up in September with Salman Khan and Ellen Blum, who is one of the founders of LinkedIn. And of course, Salman Khan, who is the founder of Khan Academy, have agreed to join in for the next one. So this is a continuous dialogue. And so I now want to invite Sucharita again to thank our panel. And you have been wonderful on this.
So this will take less than a minute. Thank you so much, Professor Jessica, Dr. Johan, and Trish.
Can you speak up a little bit?
We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to point out is when I approached Professor Dresselhaus's office for her to come and talk to us, I was touched by how generous her office was, and I wanted to give a shout out. Beyond what we have heard, you're an extremely kind and gentle and generous person, and that is very, very important for all of us to remember.
Well, I think that society has treated me very well, and I hope they treat all of you well, because you all deserve it.
Thank you so much. Quickly wanted to thank Katja Walt, Amy Goggins, the Innovation Series.
Big hand for Amy Goggins.
MIT Enterprise of Cambridge, and Nick Wolfheimer for doing our visuals today. And of course, I wanted to thank your office a lot. After listening to the conversation this evening, I personally have hope. I leave inspired. We have a lot of work to do. But while we understand that life is bounded by time, I think together, all of us in our own way can make a difference. Even if it's a dent, I think it's a start. We are committed to continued conversations with different sectors, academia, government, schools, very important schools, and also industries. This is just a start. We want to engage folks, and we want to go beyond talking about these. We really want to see some action on the ground. So stay tuned. In between now and fall, when we have our next event, we hope to do some things that we would love to share with you, and hopefully we will get all of you to come back again. Thank you so much.